Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we'll be looking at this review copy I was sent of Misty Isles of the Eld by Chris Kotalik. Now, this is the third book in a series that Chris has written, the other two being Slumbering Ursine Dunes and Fever Dreaming Marlinka, which is a great city supplement. I've done reviews of both of these in the past, so if you want to check those out, that's a thing you can do. Now, Misty Isles of the Eld is an island point crawl, which means that rather than a hex crawl where you can just go in any direction, it has a whole bunch of fleshed out locations with paths between them, and you simply pick which paths to go on. And the way that is justified in this is kind of hilarious. Let's see if I can get a picture here. Here we go. So here's the island in question. There's these giant slug monsters that are blocking different parts of the island, so you have to follow these paths to get from one point to another. And it's because this island has been taken over by the Eld, which are a race of horrible, lawful, evil elves from another dimension called the Cold Hell. And they have taken over this formerly idyllic island and turned it into a pocket dimension that's this horrible, acidic, barren place. So they've transformed it into their own dimension, essentially. And they're using it as a home base to launch incursions out into the rest of the world. Now, of course, Chris has an actual setting called the Hill Cantons that this is based in, but because it's an island, you can really plop it down anywhere, including in your own home settings. So let's take a look inside. All of the art on the inside was done by Luka Rejak, who is a great artist. I'm a big fan of. His stuff is very simple, very geometric, reminds me a little bit of Mobius, and it really evokes the weird fantasy that I think this is going for. Because these Eld, as I said, are from another dimension, so there's an interdimensional aspect to this, but also a high weird science fantasy element. Because these elves use a lot of science fantasy technology. Like they fly around in these bubble ships that shoot fireballs, they have ray guns, and things like that. So if that's your style, then this is right up your alley. Let's take a look at what you get here. We have some information on how to get to the island, because you have to navigate through this ring of clouds around the island that prevents you from getting there. We have information on the grub ridges that are blocking the way, and the Eld command structure, along with major named Eld that you can deal with. Each of them have their own personalities and a short write-up. We have the Eld defense plan. So as players go around mucking up things in the Eld's defenses, then the Eld are going to go from alert level 0 to alert level 1, where they're actually going to be on alert and looking out for you, and it's going to be hard to surprise them. To alert level 2, where they go on full offensive, seeking you out and destroying you, all the way up to alert level 3, where you've made so much of an impact that they go into defensive mode. And if you cause enough havoc, they will actually try and retreat from the island back to their own dimension. We have Elven or Eld reinforcements that they can send in after you. We have wandering critter tables. A lot of these monsters are unique to this setting. We have Eldmen, flesh blobs, escaped slaves, vat giants. There's a lot of bio-sorcery that goes on in this. The Eld are really into mutating things, tearing people apart, using their souls and bodies as fuel for their horrible machines, and so on. It definitely has a tongue-in-cheek feel throughout, but there is a lot of rather visceral violence and horror elements to it that may be too much for someone if you have a rather low threshold for that sort of thing. But by and large, the tongue-in-cheekness of this, as well as the other books by Chris Kotalik, I feel keep that in check. So we have a write-up of each of the major point crawls, major locations, I suppose, on the point crawl. But a lot of them are actual fleshed-out locations that have rooms and dungeons and so on, and those are fleshed out in more detail later on. For example, we have Adventure Site number 1, which is a monument floating in the air. That's a prison for a god that's being tortured by the Eld for their own mysterious purposes. And of course, you can barge in here and free the god if you want, which will have repercussions down the line. This god actually has a connection back to Fever Dreaming Marlinko, Chris Kotalik's city supplement. So players who have read that before will like that connection. We have a large plantation house, and this interior cartography is done by Cecil Howe, the creator of HexKit. We have the Pagoda City. So you know how in North Korea, there's these big cities that are completely empty, that are just there for propaganda purposes, to make it look like they're richer than they are? So the Eld do the same thing. They build these giant fake cities to give an impression of Eld power on dimensions that they are invading. But it's pretty much just a giant empty facade, with only the main tower or the main fortress at the center actually being in use. And each of the rooms is very well fleshed out. There's a lot of interest and variety, which is a big deal. There's not a lot of empty rooms or things where there's just a guys to fight. There's always some sort of twist or some sort of weird sight to see that keeps players interested at every step. One big thing that could be improved here is I would like to see the actual names of the rooms written on the rooms themselves. That would speed things up a lot, I think. We have a lot of psychic powers in use. There is even a psychic class that he has added at the back. This is designed for Labyrinth Lord, like a lot of old school role-playing games. But like most OSR stuff, you could easily adapt it for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons or any other D&D-like game. We have the Vat Complex, where a lot of their horrible biosorcery takes place. And they've had a problem here recently, the Eld have, because they have unwittingly unleashed one of their rivals, which is a demon from one of the hot hells, as opposed to their own dimension of the cold hell. And it's been wreaking havoc inside the Vat Complex, leading to a standoff. So as you explore that faction element of the two different, there's a war going on already when you get there, that element is something that's going to really freshen things up, I think. I like it when there's locations that already have conflict in place. It's a quite large location with a lot of detailed rooms. So let's move ahead to the Anti-Chaos Index, which is a feature that a lot of Chris Katolik's books have. And it basically just shows how the setting is going to change as players interact with it. Because the island that the Eld have taken over was originally this kind of idyllic, mythic, forested island. And now that it's been overlaid with part of the plane of the cold hell, everything's gone bad. And as you mess around and overthrow the Eld's plans and cause problems for them, it raises the anti-chaos score, which slowly loosens their hold on this dimension, and the original nature of the place starts reasserting itself, which is really cool, because players can see that old mythic world slowly coming back to life again. To the point where if things go badly enough for the Eld, the grub ridges go massive, miles-long steely cocoons, and then they crack open in ear-shattering avalanches. Large gossamer moths burst forth in a richly saturated, hyper-vivid profusion of day-glow oranges, yellows, and blood reds, as all of the gods from this island rise back up to the surface again, and all of the Eld book it back to their own dimension. We have a bestiary full of a lot of his weird monsters that he's added, including the bone grinder, the cerebral boar worm, which bores into your brain to control your thoughts. We got the Eld. We have energy constructs, flesh blobs, ghouls, meat kitties, a sentient gate. I really like this one. It's a giant, let's just see what it says. It's created when the permanent gate spontaneously becomes self-aware. It's essentially a portal that's in the silhouette of a person. It's a giant hole into the darkest depths of space. So as it walks around, all the air is rushing into its body. It's a great idea. It's a terrifying thing to throw at your players. Stygian hounds, vat giants, the vat men that tend them. And we have the Psychonaut, which is a new psychic class. It includes a number of weird mutations and deformations that are going to happen as you use your psychic powers too much. And it's going to have a whole bunch of new psychic powers, including things like psychic bolts, the mind salve. We have the necrocognitive recall, the retrovolution, and so on. We have a variety of Eld weapons, which are, as I said, of the high science variety. And a lot of times you're going to have to roll just to see if you can even understand them, much less teach them to anyone else. And if you understand them badly enough, then they can actually explode in your face. We have grenades, we have ray guns, we have things that launch razor discs at you. We have giant glue tubes that can glue people in place. The mustache of grappling, a mustache that's like this big Fu Manchu mustache you attach to your face that can fight for you, which is a very weird idea. The skin suit. It's a suit that you can put on that can replicate you. So if someone else goes into it, it can make a mold of you and put it onto someone else. the Soul Cube, some new armors, and some weird vehicles like the bubble car, right? The little bubble car here flying around. Reminds me of the George Jetson. Hover chairs, some random artifacts. You can roll on this to create things like, what's its make? It's a resin plate, and its function is it's a slave disciplinary device. So you can just roll on this and create weird artifacts that you can throw into your setting. And then at the back, we have all of the maps put in one place, which is nice. So that's about it for Misty Isles of the Eld. It's a great, weird little setting. It's very compact, very carefully and thoroughly fleshed out, and it's a lot easier to run than a lot of hex crawls due to the fact that it's a point crawl. So players are more limited to where they can go. That makes their choices more careful, and their choices are more limited, so they're not just overwhelmed with a profusion of possible options. If you're interested in this, I will put a link down in the description below, as usual, where you can check it out online and download it in PDF or in print form, as well as all of the other books written by Chris Kotalik. But before we go, I would like to thank my patrons, especially James Enders and Michael Feil. These guys have done an amazing job supporting the channel, in some cases for years, and it's been a huge blessing that the channel's been able to keep running because of support from people like that. And because of my patrons, I've been able to start doing a new thing, which is creating monthly one-page dungeons just for my patrons, at least anyone who is of the $2 level and up. The one that I just released today, I'll show you right here. It's called The King's Thirst. It's a cool little dungeon involving catacombs, some weird treasures, and multi-faction conflict, which is really my favorite thing in dungeons. So if you'd like to check that out, you can join me on Patreon and see all the new stuff I'm making. Remember to join me next time when I'm going to be reviewing Tower of the Stargazer by James Edward Raji IV from Lamentations of the Flame Princess. This is one of the original introductory adventures for LOTFP, and I'm excited to check it out. See you guys next time. Thanks for watching.